My name is Garine Panossian, and I am the proud granddaughter of Margos Snabian, who was one of the resistant fighters in the heroic battle of Musa Dagh during the Armenian Genocide. This is my grandfather. I am so grateful to my father for writing and publishing my grandfather's story. Because of that, we all know that he was a hero, and it was something to feel very proud of. Just like the Musa Dagh Resistance itself, his publishing the book, writing, recording, publishing is a demand for justice and a call to action to everyone who reads it and learns about this history. Musa Dagh had 6 major villages, and my grandfather was from Bityas. He was from this village. My grandfather and other Armenians had been seeing that the Turkish government was becoming more and more abusive to Armenians. He knew that it would be very dangerous for him to join the army. In fact, almost all Armenian men who joined were put on unarmed battalions where they were later killed. They heard that killings and massacres were happening in Adana. One day, my grandfather, who was working on a farm very up in the mountains, met a friend, Boros, and they were talking about the Adana massacres and what's going to happen if the Turks came to their villages. So Boros told my grandfather that a neighboring village in Khıdırbeg, young men are secretly buying arms. A couple of days later, Hagop and my grandfather met with other 2 trustworthy friends, and they decided to raise the money and to buy the weapons. They came up with the money and bought 4 Gra guns, and these guns came with 25 bullets. A little later, they bought 3 more guns. They let the mayor and the elderly of the village, and they called them to a secret meeting, and they showed them the guns and told them that they should raise money to buy more guns. So altogether, in the village of Bityas, they bought 17 guns. This was a dangerous work that they did, but my grandfather said that they were very confident that now everybody was alerted, and if an attack happened, they are prepared. They're in their minds. In July of that same year, 1915, an official letter was sent to the village. It was indicated that they would wait and were not to be open to open the envelope until a particular date. In the meantime, some of the young men who went to the army, remember, escaped from the army and came back with the horror stories, how they unarmed the Armenian soldiers and killed them in their camps, the massacres, deportations of hundreds and thousands of Armenians out into death marches. These stories convinced the Musa Dagh Armenians to be prepared. They knew that time had come. They opened that letter, which said they had to leave their homes in 8 days with little, whatever they need, not that much, and go to a specific location. Some of the villagers decided to disobey the order. They went up in the mountains, but others were afraid to disobey the orders, and when the date arrived, they were rounded up by the authorities and marched out into the desert, where most were massacred. In the mountain, the freedom fighters met and decided their strategies. They divided themselves up into 4 groups, and each had a leader. That's my grandfather. Is it clear which one? I took this picture in Armenia in Musa Dagh Museum, and I don't know what I was thinking. I only focused on my grandfather, and this is the whole picture I have. I took this picture, and I wish I had the whole thing. I mean, just this part. I am not going to go into details about how they fought up on the mountains. But when we say 53 days, it wasn't 53 days consecutive fighting. There were 3 major battles and few minor ones. And my grandfather said that there were 3 major details that helped them. One is the villagers were very familiar of the mountains. And the heavy fog. I couldn't find a picture with a fog because my father, who was born in Musa Dagh, said that they had very heavy fog all the time. It's like San Francisco. You know, it's right across the sea. And another thing that helped them was the battles took place during the holy month, the Muslims' holy month of Ramadan. And the fighters were not that motivated to fight with hungry tummies. So these circumstances helped them survive and endure for 53 days from July 12 to September 12 and on to 15. And this is the flag that saved the Musa Daghians, and that's how they got help from the French ships which came around Musa Dagh and saw the flag, saw the flames, and helped them. They were transported to Port Said, which is in Egypt. And they lived there until 1919 when they returned to Musa Dagh. My grandfather and my grandmother were engaged in 1911. At that time, they didn't date. They were arranged. That was an arranged engagement. From 1911 to 1915, that's 4 years, they were engaged. After that, the battle happened. Everybody went up to the mountains, and then they were transported to Port Said. And my grandmother lived in Port Said under this, on the tent city, Port Said. When they returned, my grandfather didn't have money to get married and support the family, so they waited on another 4 years. And for 12 years, they were engaged. Yeah. And they got married in 1923. My grandmother at that time was 24 years old. And that was considered a very old lady for that time to be married. For a long time after World War I, Musa Dagh was under French control. And in 1939, the French made an agreement with the Turkish government in which they gave that whole province, which Musa Dagh was included, to Turkey. And the Armenians, my grandfather and the Musa Daghians, knew that it would be miserable and very dangerous to live under the Turkish rule. They asked the French, and the French agreed to settle them in another town called Anjar in Lebanon. This is the village Anjar today. This is the village Anjar. It's very beautiful now, but it wasn't like this when they came there. My grandfather died in Anjar, and he was given a funeral worthy of a hero. My mother's side, my grandfather and my grandparents were orphans. My grandmother was 4 years old when the genocide happened, and my grandfather was 11. They were orphaned. And she doesn't even remember her last name. She knew her first name, but no last name. So I have both sides, but my Musa Daghian side sometimes heavy, and we are very proud of it. Armenians live around the world today. We have a big community in California. A large number of Musa Daghians live in California, in San Francisco, in Fresno, in Los Angeles. And every year, around September 15, we gather to remember the 18 martyrs who died fighting for us, fighting for our land, fighting for our dignity. Thank you for listening to me, to my story. I hope you enjoyed it.